Hello everyone, Precious7 here back again with more BTD6, and in this video, in this week of Bloonarius, it's going to be considered a flying fortress, beat Bloonarius. So originally I wanted to do, something else maybe like, Bez or Ray of Doom, but unfortunately no, since Cornfield isn't really a good map for Dartling Gunners, so I decided that I would have to do a global range tower, and the perfect global range tower for that was, well, Flying Fortress. It was split between that and Apache Prime, but I decided, Flying Fortress because, hey, why not? Now, looking back, I probably could have, done something like Etienne, as, he's also kind of global range, but I wasn't really sure how that was going to play out, since, of course, you have to buy level 10 before first tier Bloonarius. If not, there's no way you can actually beat him. And also, you do have to save up for attack speed buffs, because, I do believe that bug where 2 UCAVs spawn for Etienne hasn't been fixed yet. I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on that. I don't really read the BT6 patch notes as much, although I do read the Battles 2 patch notes as much just to see, what towers have gotten buffed, and I guess to sort of predict what towers will become meta or how I would counter some towers that have been buffed. So the strat for this week is, a bit of a curious one. So you'll see I'll go Dart into Ben, and as you'll see I'll actually drop down Ace just immediately. Why Ace? Because, well, Ace is actually fairly good on this map. As you can see, just like a 0-0 base Ace, it's just kind of like soloing round 7 and 8. I just really needed to just knock out fast Bloons, just like down to where, Dart Monkey can easily pick them off. Of course I will leak some lies. As you'll see, this is probably the closest and one of the most difficult cancer buff towers beat Bloonarius, simply because, Flying Fortress is not as good as I thought it would be for, for a tower that costs, like over 100k if you include the tier 4 and tier 5. It is surprising just kind of how just not really as good as it really should be. Anti-Bloon, is cheaper and it wasn't as difficult as this one. Something you'll notice throughout the entire run is that I had to sell my farms just multiple times to actually, be able to farm hard enough to not farm hard enough to afford stuff, because I needed to actually afford a Spectre by tier 1, and by tier 2 I wanted to get Flying Fortress. And, that's incredibly expensive. I'm getting a 24k tower by tier 1 by around 40. Of course, it's not too difficult. I did do that, with super buff anti-Bloon, but of course, that was also fairly easy. I just need an overclock for tier 2, and that was just about it. But I did get a Flying Fortress by tier 2, simply because I wasn't really sure if super buff Spectre can actually or overclock Spectre can beat tier 2 Bloonarius. Of course, I'd get a call to arms, something like that, but that's a bit expensive. Well, I mean, of course, Flying Fortress is just as expensive, but I feel like I didn't really want to focus too much on support for this one. As you'll see, it was a bit hard to actually afford stuff. I actually had to sell my farms, multiple times. I think I had to sell my farms, throughout at least once throughout every tier, which that was just how much support Flying Fortress needed in order to actually, be able to beat Bloonarius. And even then, once I got all the buffs up, as you'll see in tier 5, it was a very close finish, and I think that was similar for pretty much most of the tiers. Is that Flying Fortress is not as good as I thought it would be. I thought this would be a fairly easy one because it's big playing. That one tier 5 that everyone loves, but no one really ever uses because just how expensive it is. And so really, around 40, how that goes basically dictates my entire run. I did do some practice attempts before this. I'd actually do the challenge before I start, simply just because I'm curious to see just how difficult it is, or if it's even possible. But so I did do some testing before this. And really, around 40, it kind of depends on how much I greed, how much money I can have to where I can actually be able to afford stuff for the rest of the run. So for this attempt, I actually was able to sell everything but one farm, which was, it was a lot better than my practice run, which was fairly good because my practice one, I didn't even get past tier 3. I just really couldn't. So yeah, there was that. So pretty much it was just really find the cheapest defense in order to actually beat just rounds 1 through 39, and then, you know, Spectre obviously will take care of the rest. So after going home and going back in, just to give myself, you know, just a bit more time in order to actually prepare. So I sell pretty much most of my farms, including, you know, that just 12001. And you see, I did have enough money to actually afford Spectre with 1 farm left over, which is really nice actually. And of course, I also had enough for a Camo Village. I was gonna need that one because I'm pretty sure Camo Rainbows come on, I think it's 42. There have been a few runs of just me playing casual Bloonarius where I completely forget Camo Detection for 42, I believe it is, and I end up dying to Camo Rainbows, which is incredibly annoying, but hey, it's what it is. Also, I do think that this probably would be way more difficult without center path, without the center path buff. Well, by center path, well, you see, Spectre is kind of notorious for just whipping in general. It doesn't whip Bloonarius, no, it whips the ceramic insides. So something you'll see like throughout the run is I keep putting my Spectre, you know, farther and farther from Bloonarius and closer to the exit, simply because, like, if I didn't, Spectre would miss all the ceramic waves, which is kind of annoying, and it's actually kind of hurts me late game, especially since, you know, Flying Fortress sucks against ETs, and it's pretty much the same with all tier 5 towers that suck against ETs. So, you know, having Spectre, you know, or Flying Fortress so far back against the track, you know, isn't very good, especially, you know, when DETs come on like round, what's it, like 112. So as you can see, you know, Spectre is, you know, doing a number on Bloonarius. You know, it's not as fast as I would like it to be, but it's pretty good. It obviously will work for tier 1, but of course, you know, it's like kind of not really a good thing, since, you know, if the tier 4 is this slow for tier 1, just imagine, you know, tier 2 and the rest of the tiers. As you saw with that ceramic cluster, you know, I slowed down the game because, you know, just Spectre was like very close to leaking, you know, just like random balloon insides. So while Spectre's working on Bloonarius, I'm working on, you know, farming as hard as possible. Now, I was going for plantations instead of marketplaces because I assumed that, you know, I wouldn't really necessarily need, you know, marketplaces in order to sell anymore for tier 2, you know, because the new bottom path buff to where, you know, they give increased sellback. It's better to go marketplaces if you do plan on selling them later on, because you won't lose as much money and they'll pay themselves off faster, per se, simply because they gain more money from sellback. So as you can see, you know, tier 1, you know, was a bit slow, but it's not, you know, just ungodly slow. I killed it around 50, which again is okay. You know, that does give me 10 rounds to prepare, although, you know, I would like more than 10 rounds. Now I actually end up selling, you know, Spectre in order to get a never miss. Why? Because, well, I need as much money as I can. I tried, you know, just to like keep Spectre around, you know, just for mid game, and found out, you know, I couldn't really farm as hard for mid game in order to actually be able to beat tier 2. So I ended up getting just an alpha buff never miss with Jungle Drums and Camo Village, which can solo up to round 79, which is actually kind of impressive for like a tower that costs like 2k. So here I'm spamming marketplaces because I figured that, you know, plantations probably weren't going to pay themselves off like enough in time, so I just thought it'd probably be better just to spam marketplaces all over the map, especially since I will have to sell them again for tier 2 of Bloonarius. Now, speaking of tier 2, I ended up selling, you know, my alchemist, and then I started selling my farms because, well, I just needed all of them, as much money as I could get for Flying Fortress. After doing a bit of math, I came to the conclusion that even if I sold in my marketplaces, I still was not going to be able to afford Flying Fortress. Now, of course, this is not really a good thing, because, well, you know, Spectre is doing a decent amount of damage right now, but it really just is not fast enough in order to beat tier 2. And so I was actually considering selling my plantations, even though I would really just lose a lot of money doing that. But, you know, I was really just kind of no choice. If I didn't, I wouldn't have had time in order to actually beat tier 2. So I was saving up, I'm pretty sure I'm saving up like around 25k just to be safe in order to actually afford Flying Fortress. It is a bit of a shame that I do actually have to get Flying Fortress for tier 2. Now of course, I end up getting Flying Fortress in time for 63, but 63 really isn't really much of a worry since, Spectre already just solos around 63 by itself on maps like this, where it's not really too hard. So I ended up getting the Flying Fortress. As you can see, the damage Flying Fortress does is pretty good. It's killing it fairly quickly to make up for the time I lost with just having Spectre. It doesn't really delete the SRAM wave like I thought it would, but hey, that's fine. So by now I figured that I probably could just just start getting my BRFs up, getting Monkeyopolis up. I decided to go for the hyper efficient farming method of going for like a 3 or 2 farm, Monkeyopolis, a small Monkeyopolis into a big Monkeyopolis. That plan didn't really work out the way I really wanted it to. Now as you can see, this is a fairly swift Bloonarius kill. I'm pretty sure this is the fastest kill out of every single tier. And no, that's not even like for exaggeration or anything. Now I sell Flying Fortress again for Spectres simply because I just need as much money as I can. So I ended up putting that money towards a 3 farm Monkeyopolis, and I decided to put the rest of the money towards, well, BRFs. So doing this, really just kind of not really saves me money, but just puts money towards, that extra cash generation they do desperately need in order to actually, beat the rest of the tiers. So anyway, skipping on to tier 3 of Bloonarius, I actually do have enough money to actually be able to afford Flying Fortress straight up without selling. Now of course Flying Fortress is not going to be enough in order to beat tier 3. So I ended up getting my overclock ready, which I'm able to afford just kind of easily. And I only have like 2 BRFs and the rest are plantations. It still gives a decent amount of money in order to actually be able to afford everything that I need for tier 2. So the next thing I'm going for is a call to arms, as overclock by itself will not be enough. Even though call to arms and homeland are a bit expensive, they combined they actually cost like 60k. That's not including the tiers below them. But I'm actually able to make that in pretty much no time. So like tier 3 and beyond is where you're gonna start seeing pretty much every tier of Bloonarius just be like a photo finish. It's incredibly close. Each and every time he actually dies, you'll see here like Bloonarius is like a third of the way through the track, like probably close to halfway at this point, and we haven't even reached the first skull. Now I did actually end up beating this tier first try, but it still just takes a long time in order to actually beat Bloonarius. Like I really think that Flying Fortress is not as good as I thought it would be against just Bloonarius. I thought it would be similar to Anti-Bloon because Flying Fortress and Anti-Bloon are both similar price, and I assumed that it would probably just be similar to that, but I guess wrong. Now of course, as you can see, Bloonarius is just ever so slowly inching closer towards the exit. Now the third skull of Moabs was a bit scary. I wasn't really sure if they were just gonna make it towards the exit. They didn't. Flying Fortress just deleted those. And as you can see, I was like, at this point I was just kind of like doubting that I was not gonna be able to beat Bloonarius, that I wasn't gonna have enough time. Of course this is a really bad thing because DDT rounds are coming, so I'm having like a mini heart attack whenever DDT rounds come about, because Flying Fortress is so far back and it's focusing all of its firepower on Bloonarius that it really does not have time to focus on DDTs, which of course 95 is coming up as well, so that's a bit scary. Even though Bloonarius basically made it towards the exit, just looking at that, he's basically there. I still ended up beating him, and that was incredibly close. Now of course this isn't all the support that I'm gonna get, so I ended up selling overclock and homeland to actually afford just more stuff towards support for Bloonarius. As of course tier 4 comes in literally 5 rounds. I was actually planning on spending that money towards I can't remember the tier 5 farm. Jesus. Whatever the tier 5 farm name is called. I use it every week in Bloonarius and Lich, and I still can't remember it. But anyways, whatever that tier 5 was, I was thinking about putting it towards that. But I figured that I probably would need Ultra Boost for tier 4, and it'd probably be better just to start working on my 10 stacks beforehand, like Flying Fortress can be as strong as possible before tier 4. Now of course, as I'm recording this, I just remember that the tier 5 farm is called Banana Central. Pretty sure, and Monkeyonomics is the tier 5 for bank, and then it's Monkey, I can't remember, bottom pat tier 5, I never really used that one. Anyways, I'm working on my 10 stacks of Ultra Boost, just before tier 4, and I end up getting my homeland. And so yeah, pretty much it's basically tier 4 is the same as tier 5, except I just have Ultra Boost this time. But of course I am gonna need more support in order to actually beat tier 4, because I really just don't think that Ultra Boost is gonna provide enough defense in order, not enough defense, enough support in order to actually beat tier 4. As you can see, it is still a bit slow, but of course I haven't worked on my 10 stacks yet, so Flying Fortress will just slowly get stronger beforehand. Now I decided to get Permabrew here simply because I just need it as much as I can, even though Permabrew really just won't do much for Flying Fortress. Every little bit helps. I even get a Cripple Moab on strong just to beat it as fast as possible. So now is the time I start going for I guess just non-buffing support items. So I just end up going for the debuff option, which is of course Cripple Moab. Now Cripple Moab did do pretty decent. I did notice like some acceleration in damage, but I kind of did worry that of course even with Cripple Moab it still was not going to be enough. Now as you can see, Flying Fortress is actually like just deleting the normal rounds that's coming out, but just Bloonarius in general just kind of sucks. I guess maybe they should buff the 100k towers for possible damage. So I ended up getting a Super Brittle as well, and it's of course Super Brittle combo with Cripple Mob just like absolutely just shreds Bloonarius. I'm partly because the reason I feel like Cripple Mob is doing just a ton of damage with the debuff from Super Brittle, even though it's only like I think Super Brittle's like what, plus 5 damage, plus 4 damage, still isn't like a whole lot combined. With Cripple Mob, I feel like I'm not really sure the exact number of damage it does, but it's like probably over like 40 layers, 40 damage per shot. So that kill was rather quick, so just because just Super Brittle and just debuff combo in general is just incredibly overpowered. So I ended up getting my Banana Central, and I'm now just farming hard enough as I just need Temple in 10 rounds. I know that's a bit of a tall order to fulfill, Temple in 10 rounds, and of course I still need to save money for support, or I guess just like other support, like I had to get my Super Brittle and Cripple Moab back. So I ended up actually having to sell pretty much most of my farms in order to be able to afford true Sun God, just in time, which is a bit painful. I was able to leave the the Monkeyopolis, which is nice, but I was like barely able to afford it. I couldn't even afford super range in order to actually affect the actual Flying Fortress yet. And of course I ended up digging my true Sun God buff, and just look how slow that is. I was just like sitting there just thinking, wow, even with all the support, Flying Fortress is still just doing just this small amount of damage. I do think that maybe NK might buff all these towers that cost 100k in order to be better against boss balloons. Because if you don't know, in the recent update they did buff super mines in order to actually be better for boss balloons, while also nerfing Mad, which is kind of sad, but Mad is still pretty good for like just normal tiers. Well, not just normal, like even like elite Bloonarius is still pretty good, but it's just not as good. It definitely is a lot slower than than it was before, but I guess it is what it is. So they ended up buffing super mines and nerfing Mad. They might do the same with just other towers in general. They might buff all these uber expensive towers for just boss balloon damage, simply because, well, you'll never really use super mines in a real game unless you're going like hyper late game. And even then, super mines isn't really a tower you want to bring hyper late game. It causes a lot of lag, and the damage it does isn't good enough for just late game. Now, even though the buff to super mines is greatly appreciated, I still don't really think it's worth using in boss Bloons simply because, well, most of the damage buffs come from fortified Bloons, and of course Bloonarius, to my knowledge, isn't fortified. Doesn't have the fortified property in any way. Imagine a fortified Bloonarius. Now that'd be funny. Probably NK could probably do that for, like, I don't know, April 1st or something. That'd be quite funny. But I guess it'd be unfair at the same time because I don't think you'd be able to beat him. So as you can see, the bad is making it far as well as DETs, and I actually ended up dying here, which, is a bit sad. Even with all these buffs, Flying Fortress still is struggling against DET. So I ended up killing Bloonarius a bit faster. I don't even know how. Probably got my debuff towers up faster, but here I decided to get, a super glue in the bank, simply just because I wasn't really sure how in the world Flying Fortress was going to do against the DDTs from, the last skull. So I ended up getting, of course, super glue just to make sure that, Flying Fortress can actually beat the DDTs before they end up leaking, because they only have 300 lives, which isn't really enough to leak a whole DDT. So basically, now it's really just a mad dash to the finish. I actually started, farming again. I'm not really sure why. I'm pretty sure, in my brain, I just kind of forgot that, oh, this is the last tier of Bloonarius, so I am just kind of wasting money by, farming again. Even then, if I start farming, there really isn't really much buffs I can really add at this point. The only thing I can really add is, Glue Strike, or I think it's Glue Storm is the tier 5. I can't remember the two. That's, really the only buff, quote-unquote buff I can get, since, Glue Strike isn't really a buff, it's more just kind of a debuff. But it's still, just is kind of needed. I mean, I guess really not, because it really only is, what, +1 damage, which really isn't a whole lot, especially with all these uber strong towers that are, buffing the Flying Fortress to, +5 damage. So I ended up having my cripple mob on first, just for the bad insights, just to take out the bad layer a bit quicker, and, just to actually, beat the insides. Now, as you can see, even with all these, buffs and whatnot, it is still, just fairly slow. There's, 200k left, and Bloonarius is just, so very close to the exit again. So, I was just kind of hoping and praying that, just True Sun God, would maybe help out Flying Fortress a bit, and beat the actual, Bloon rounds, so Flying Fortress can focus. Now, Flying Fortress was ultimately able to do this. This is definitely, the hardest cancer buff tower to beat Bloonarius, by far. I think it's even, harder than Churchill, in my opinion. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, join our Discord, link is in the description, down below.